Welcome back to my kitchen. It is Bridget here from Bridget's Kitchen, wishing you a absolutely fabulous New Year's Eve wherever you are. It is New Year's Eve here in Sydney. It's just gone 11 a.m. in the morning. It is a beautiful day, but you know, we are still having lots and lots of fires throughout Australia. The whole country's got different states have got emergencies happening in so many places around Australia. So my thoughts and my heart go out to anyone who has affected by the fires. Anyone, like, we have so many people who are part of our group who've been evacuated numerous times. So we really are thinking of you all on this New Year's Eve and hoping that you are safe. So it's my first day back in the kitchen after a while. It's been a while. I mean, I've been in the kitchen, but it's my first video back with you guys. So please let me know where you're coming from today. Let me know where you're joining us from today as well. It is an exciting class. I know I say that every single time. I absolutely know 100% that every time I stand in front of you guys in my kitchen, I'm like, it's so exciting, but it literally is, because I get excited by lots of really cool things, and this is a really cool thing. I'm going to teach you guys, and it's a recipe that I shared a couple weeks ago. So it is already available out there on Facebook, and Mahay's going to throw you guys up a link so you can have, if you don't already have the recipe, to this, like the physical PDF that you can print off, or you can, you know, keep it on your computer. If you don't already have that recipe, I suggest you download it, because it is just one of those absolute keepers. Because let's be honest here. Oh, hi to Sharon from Perth. Thank you so much. And yes, Catherine, I'm looking forward to this bread too, because it's one of those things, you know, when you decide to lead a gluten-free life. And for me, it wasn't a decision that I took lightly, because let's be honest, I really like bread. I love how it tastes. I'm not one of those, oh, I'm just doing it because it's cool. Totally not. I grew up eating bread. And to Nicole, joining us from Tasmania. Looking forward to coming down to your part of the world one day too, Nicole. Really soon, hopefully. So yeah, it's one of those, you know, I get a little bit upset, I have to say, when people think I'm just doing it to be cool. This is nothing cool. You know, the coolest thing I can do is to eat bread and it not to be negatively impact my health. That would be the coolest thing in the world, right? But it's actually not what happens. I have massive gluten intolerances and gluten sensitivity, which basically means my body will no longer allow me to eat a normal loaf of bread. And it breaks my heart, because let's be honest, bread is awesome. And you know, bread for me growing up was a filler. So we had bread because, you know, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, and there was a big family to feed. So bread was always on the table. There was always a loaf of bread and a pound of butter on the table, and it was bread and butter just to make sure you got enough food in you, because you had to kind of fight for the protein and anything else that was on the table. So yes, Michelle, I'll see you on Saturday. I'm in Newcastle on Saturday, guys, and that Newcastle sold out Newcastle cooking class and book launch, which is so exciting. So yes, bread, I love it. It don't love me. So having the ability now, and I've been testing so many bread recipes, and I wanted to get, you know, a loaf of bread that was not only delicious and easy to make, because it can't be too difficult, because I don't have time for difficult, you know, I like things that are really easy. I needed to have a bread that was delicious, easy to make, and had that sensation that I'm eating a crusty loaf of bread. And this is it, guys. This is it. This is it. This is it. This is it. It is phenomenal. Now, I do have to put the warning out to you guys, though. This bread is still a treat food. This is not something that you can go, yep, I'm just going to eat that bread every day and I'm going to lose weight. No, you're not. Be very mindful that I have removed the gluten from this bread, but it still does use carbs in the form of the gluten-free flour that I'm using. So just be aware of that. Oh, look at that. We have someone joining us from the USA. Hi, Jackie. Welcome. I'm so happy you're here joining us today. Thank you so much. So we are going to get into this recipe. It is, like I said, it's really easy to do, but there are some techniques, and I want to go through those techniques with you guys, because literally I want you to be master bread makers, master gluten-free bread makers. Once you know these techniques, every time you go to make a loaf, and remember, treat loaf, I make this maybe maximum of 1 time a week. When I'm going to treat myself, treat the family, or when we have people coming over, I rock it out as well. So it's not something you can have every day, but you now have access to a recipe that is going to give you that sensation of having the most wonderful loaf of bread. Crusty, cut it through it, and it crunches when you cut, which is just, I'm so excited. All right, so yes, when it comes to this loaf, there are some techniques. I'm going to show you those techniques. They're not that hard. Once you know them, they're going to be stuck in here, which is really important. Like I said, if you haven't got that recipe, Mahe, have you shared that link? Mahe has shared a link in the comments to the recipe so you can have the PDF version. And now let's go through it step by step. Like I said, it's not hard, but man, it's so worth it. Like, it is so worth it. All right, so come on down to my bench. Come on down here. And the first thing we're going to start with is we need to ferment or to activate the yeast. Really, really important. And yes, this is a yeasted bread. So what I'm going to be doing today, I've got my little jug. I'm going to weigh everything out straight onto my scales, which makes it so nice and easy. And I need to add lukewarm water in here. So lukewarm, which is blood temperature. If you want to be absolutely precise with that, and for some people they do like the precision, I like the precision as well. You could even use a food thermometer, digital food thermometer. The temperature range that you're going for when it comes to your water is between 36 to 40 degrees, no more than 40 degrees. So it's around about, but lukewarm or blood temperature is perfect. I'm going straight up to the tap. Going to the tap, the best way to do it. So just run your finger under the tap till it feels lukewarm, and then you got to add 325 mils. And this is where you need to be precise. This is why I do it straight onto the scales. There's no guesswork with me looking here. I know that that is exactly 325 mils, which is perfect. And if I want to check the temperature as well, and if you got one of these for in your Christmas stocking, this is a great time to rock it out. Like I said, you don't have to, because we're all pretty good at judging what lukewarm is, especially if you've had babies. You always check in the temperature of the water before you put the babies in the bath. That's what I always think. So, but you can be even more precise by doing this. But you want lukewarm blood temperature. And the reason why we want lukewarm blood temperature water, not too hot and not too cold, is yeast likes to ferment and grow in lukewarm or blood temperature conditions, which is what we now have created here in our jug. So the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to go to the freezer for this, and this is a really good tip. I keep my yeast, and I'm just using an instant yeast. You can also use dried yeast. Instant yeast just means it absolutely will ferment on you. It's instant. I always like to double up and make absolute sure that it's going to work. Like, I could literally put that straight into the flour and hope that I get a good rise from the bread. I always like to test it. One of the reasons I like to test it is because you need to make sure that your yeast is still active. Now I'm adding 2 heaped tablespoons of yeast into that, active yeast into there. 2 heaped tablespoons, that's quite a lot for one loaf of bread. But we need to give the bread the opportunity to rise because we're taking out the gluten. So I've got 2 heaped tablespoons, and yes, I keep my yeast in the freezer. I keep my yeast in the freezer because when yeast is kept in the freezer, it goes dormant. So it basically goes into like a hibernation sort of mode, and this way your yeast will not deactivate or die on you, because this is a living organism, and when it goes into the freezer, it goes into hibernation. As soon as it comes out here and goes into my lukewarm water, it comes back to life again. So it's pretty clever stuff. So keep your yeast in your freezer, it'll last longer. If in doubt, test it first. What you're looking for is the fermentation to happen, or the activation to happen, and we're going to help it along just with a tablespoon of fiber syrup. Tablespoon of fiber syrup. Now, fiber syrup is not a sugar, it is what is known as an oligosaccharide. It still will help the yeast to ferment, which is really important. Give a bit of a stir, and this is the tester. We leave that to the side, we wait till that starts to rise up for us. So we just put that off to the side, take a couple of minutes, and what I'm looking for, and this is how I know my yeast is active, hence why I don't throw it straight into the flour, because I always like to check to make sure that we've got active yeast. This is the best way to do it, even if you're using instant, because yeast, like I said, it is a living organism, and if it's old, it can no longer be active. So we're going to leave that there, and what I'm looking for is almost like the head of the top of the beer. I want this to be nice and frothy up the top, because then I know my yeast is wonderfully active. If in doubt, throw it out, go get yourself some more yeast. Just if you've got any, if you think, oh, my yeast has been in the fridge for 6 months, chances are it's not as active as it could be. It even may be completely dead. So you want to throw it out and you want to get a new container, and then just leave that container in the freezer, and every time you want to make bread, a couple tablespoons goes into here, and then the container just goes back into the freezer to live. That's where it lives, on the side of the door of the freezer. So that's now fermenting. We're going to move on to the dry ingredients. So just to make things easy, I'm going to put my bowl here, and oh, note on the bowl, I am using I'm using a KitchenAid here, as you guys can see. I've got a KitchenAid here. I prefer to use a stand mixer. It doesn't have to be a KitchenAid, but something where I can actually just leave it to do its thing while I do other stuff. You can do this by hand. It will require some, some muscles, and maybe you want to call it, phone a friend to come and help you to do some mixing and some stirring, and it will get very sticky. So I'm going to let my machine do all that work for me today, which I just love. And I've had this old beauty of a machine I've lost count of the years and the amount of kitchens it's been with me through restaurants and cafes. I've always had this, and the type of mixer I'm going to be using, like you can, in the recipe I say if you've got a dough, this is called a dough hook, perfect, use your dough hook if you've got one of these on your appliances. But if you don't, and not a lot of people do, because you tend to be quite a serious baker if you have a dough hook, then you can use one of these. And I'm going to use one of these today just to show you that it is possible. And if you have a bread maker, you can also do it in your bread maker. So you can let the bread maker do all the mixing for you if you don't have one of these, or one of these, or one of these. You can also use your bread maker for the mixing. So onto our dry ingredients. We have not too many dry ingredients today. We have gluten-free flour. Now I'm not giving you guys a brand of the flour. I'm actually just going to say gluten-free plain flour. And the reason why I'm not giving you a brand is because we all come from all over the world. Like, we had someone joining us from the USA today. We regularly have someone coming from Germany. I just found out today, we have a massive fan base in Amsterdam as well. Ireland, where else are we? Ontario, Canada, Tari, Geelong, Dubai, all over the world. So I'm not giving you a brand. I'm just saying, go to your supermarket or Aldi or wherever it is that you shop and get yourself just plain gluten-free flour. Plain gluten-free flour. And I'm adding 300 grams, which is about 10.5 ounces of flour goes in there. 300 grams. Perfect. 300 grams. And I'm also adding in, remember we're doing dry, I'm adding in xanthan gum. Now xanthan gum is very necessary for the gluten-free baker, because when we take out the gluten, we take out the ability for the bread to be elastic and for it to be nice and springy. So xanthan gum helps to bind the bread and helps to bring that elasticity to the bread as well. So this is vital. And xanthan gum can be pretty much bought from any good supermarket now. It's really commonly found in the health food section or in the gluten-free section, and also from health food stores. So you're just looking for xanthan gum, and you want to put in a whole tablespoon of xanthan gum, because we really want our bread to be just like a normal loaf of bread. That's what we're after. As well as that, I'm going to be adding in 2 teaspoons of salt. Now 2 teaspoons may seem quite a lot, but we really want to add flavor to our bread. So 2 teaspoons of salt goes in there. And I think that's all our dry. Just check, yes, that looks like all our dry ingredients. I'm going to put that onto there. Stick it all in. Thank you very much. Where is my little... Is it hiding from me? Can you... Oh, there it is. Couldn't see for looking. Alright, so that's just our dry ingredients, which is all looking pretty good. And it's all doing its thing. Give it just a really quick mix. Quick, couple seconds. We're just blending it together. Well, that is now ready. I'm just going to finish off the rest of the wet ingredients. So wet ingredients is really simple. We're going to add 2 eggs. 2 eggs are going in there. And the eggs are there to give it richness and give it sort of like a, it definitely, when it comes to the yolk, there's a certain richness in the flavor, which is what we really, really want. So eggs are there for richness. I'm also going to add a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. Now the apple cider vinegar, would you believe, apple cider vinegar is there, and it's such a small amount. Now if I was to add the apple cider vinegar straight into the yeast, they would counterbalance each other and the yeast would die. So I'm adding it into the eggs, which is really important. I'm putting the apple cider vinegar into the eggs, and just that little teaspoon of apple cider vinegar is firstly going to help to develop the flavor within the bread, but it's also going to help the yeast in that very small amount. It's going to help the yeast to be lovely and elastic, and for the proteins in the bread to really get some good stretch for us. So this is important. That little bit of apple cider vinegar, would you believe, is very, very important to the whole overall effect of our bread. And the last ingredient is just a couple tablespoons of coconut oil, or you could use avocado oil, or you could use olive oil. It's up to you. I'm using coconut oil, but you can use whatever oil you prefer, provided it's one of those healthy oils that we always talk about. So coconut, avocado, olive, one of those three is really, really good. And then we're just going to give it a little bit of a mix. I mean, I'm doing it with a spoon. I'm not having to be too concerned that it's mixed really, really well. And what you will have noticed while we were working on the dry ingredients, while we're working on the eggs, what you would have noticed is what's happened in here. So that looks like a really good head of beer. If you were to receive that beer in a pub, you would be pretty happy. That is a decent head, and that's how I know absolutely sure that my yeast is active. I'm going to get a good rise in my bread, which is really important. So with that in mind, I'm just going to add the liquid ingredients into my bowl. I am going to take my spatula here because I really want to make sure that I don't waste any of that wonderful yeast mixture that kind of gets stuck around the edges. You want to make sure you get all of that in, because that is what our bread needs, and it's also going to give it not just rise, but it gives our bread flavor too, that lovely yeast. So that goes in. This goes up, and then we let it do its thing. We give it a bit of a mix. I'll show you guys what it looks like. To begin with, it's going to look really wet, and you're going to be looking at it going, that don't look like bread. I don't know what she's up to. It's a really wet dough, but that is exactly what should be happening. If it was too dry, we would be concerned. We want a really wet dough at this stage. Hence why I said if you're doing it by hand, it can be quite sticky, because you're in there, you know, trying to mix it with a spoon and stuff. It can be very sticky. Just be prepared for sticky. You know, if you like sticky, that's a good thing. I don't like too much sticky. I like it to be a little bit cleany. You know? And I also like my machine to do the work, because honestly, I love this machine so much. So a couple of minutes is all it needs, maybe a minute, minute and a half. And what I'm looking for is that dough to be really well combined. I'm also looking to make sure, you know, I've got no hidden dry pockets of flour in there as well, that we're really, really getting into it. And that we also have already started to create this elasticness. You watch what happens when I pull it out, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's looking really, really good. So because that's looking so great, I'm going to give my bench just a little bit of a wipe down, a little bit of a clean for the next stage. So I'm setting up for the next stage for us. Come back down here. So the next stage is, we don't need that anymore. The next stage is we're going to turn the dough out onto our working bench. So it needs to be clean, and we need a little bit more of our gluten-free flour for dusting as well. Happy that I'm not sure what that time, that's just a couple minutes, maybe. You know, if you're doing it by hand, it'll definitely take you longer. If you're doing it with a machine, it could be so much quicker for you, so 2-3 minutes, something like that. And you can see just how wet that dough is, right? That's a really wet mixture. A lot wetter than what if you have made bread in the past, a lot wetter than what you probably have used in the past. So back to my trusty spatula. But first I'm just going to lay some of this flour down. I think in the recipe I say you might need up to an extra 100 grams, which is about 3.5 ounces of flour. You might need extra flour, and I haven't given you an exact amount of how much flour you will need, because everyone's going to have a different reaction. And the reason why is that the gluten-free flour that you're using, whatever brand it is, it all has different absorbency rates. So even though we're all using the same amounts, the flours are all milled differently, they're created differently, they use different quantities of maize or rice or tapioca. So I can't give you an exact amount on how much dusting flour you're gonna need. This is when it really comes down to what it looks like and what it feels like. So it's really good that you're watching this video, because it's hard to convey that through a written recipe. So much easier if you guys are watching and you're seeing what it looks like, and you're also you're really beginning to see the development of the bread as I begin to add the flour in. So just give it a good scrape. Like I said, real sticky. Don't look like bread at all. Kind of looks like a big sticky mess, but that's okay. Where is my I love my bulldozer for this job. So a little bit more flour on top, and then using very clean hands, we're just going to go through and just begin to have a bit of a feel of the bread. What does it feel like? What I'm aiming for, and I'm not going in with my fingers because I'm going to get stuck. I'm just kind of lightly passing the surface using my bulldozer just to help me to pick it up. And what I'm looking for is bounce, firstly, and I'm getting really good bounce. This feels so incredibly satisfying. This is why I always wanted to be a baker. I just think that this action, this pulling and this sponginess is just so satisfying. It is absolutely wonderful. I love seeing flour on my hands and on my apron. I just think it's marvelous. So I'm being gentle, and now I'm just rocking it back. This is the kneading action. So I'm just pushing it with that part, the palm of my hand. I'm just pushing it. I'm not allowing my fingers to get right down deep. And what I'm feeling for is that it's not sticking to this part of my hand. And what I'm getting is a very spongy, this is, like, seriously guys, this is the best part of bread making, apart from the eating of course, but this is the best part, because this dough, and it's still warm, it's warm from the mixing, it's warm from the yeasted water that we had, and what we are left with is this wonderful ball of dough that I can easily pick up. Yeah, without it sticking to my hands. You see how I'm able to transfer it? Like if I was to go with my fingers, yes, it's going to stick, but I don't want to do that. All I'm doing is just gently picking it up, and I'm able to do that without it sticking to my hands. Look, just transferring it. That's the consistency that you're looking for. And at the risk of being offensive, it should feel like a lovely bosom, a natural bosom, not a fake one. A real bosom. It should feel like a real boob. That's what you're looking for. You may have to, have a bit of a feel of your own and go, yep, that's what, I'm there. It should feel like a bosom, and that's what you're after. And if you've got that sort of consistency of your dough, if it's able to be transferred from hand to hand without it sticking to your fingers, and you haven't left a lot of stickiness behind. You see, this is the only bit of dough that I have left. Oh, there it is, that I left behind. I could actually just put it in there. There's nothing on my bench apart from flour, which is great. So, next stage. Give that bench a bit of a clean. See how, this is why bulldozers are so good, because you get to clean up your bench. Literally takes seconds. Look at that. Right. So next stage. Really important as well. You want to take some non-stick baking paper, nice big sheet, good, good size sheet of baking paper, and you want to transfer your dough to the baking paper. There is a really good reason why, and I'll show you in a second why this step is really important. We're going to leave it to double in size on the baking paper, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put a bowl over top of it, a big bowl. I'll put that to the side there. And here's one I prepared earlier for you guys. One second, let me grab it. Whoa. Yes, right. So, this one I made about an hour ago. You can see, yes, it's definitely doubled in size. It's actually kind of opened up, so all I'm going to do with my hands is just bring it back to ball shape. But it started off like that sort of size there, and it's now definitely doubled in size for us, which is awesome. So the reason why we put it onto a board like this, onto the paper, is because we now need to be able to drop it into our cast iron Dutch oven. So I've got my oven on right now. My oven is currently sitting at 250 degrees Celsius. That is really, really hot. That's actually the hottest my oven will go to. And I'm just checking what that is in Fahrenheit. 480 degrees Fahrenheit. So my oven is I've maxed it out on bake. 250 degrees. I've had my cast iron Dutch oven in my oven with the lid on for about 45 minutes because I need that Dutch oven to be smoking hot, like so hot. I'm going to go and grab it from the oven now, but before I do that I'm going to put down a wire rack because otherwise I'm going to burn my hands. I'm going to burn my bench, and I'm also going to be using 2 tea towels to get it out of the oven because it's really, really hot. Oh, she's smoking. Smoking! There we go. So, why is the Dutch oven important for this recipe? That's why I call it Dutch oven, crusty Dutch oven bowl. And bowl is the French word for ball, would you believe? So it's a French style bread. The reason why I use the Dutch oven, I heat it up, because this is what's going to give it that incredible, oh god, the heat coming off this, that incredible crustiness is what we want. So taking our doubled in size bread, you go over to, and this is why the paper's important, and all you need to do is just drop it in there. Just drop it in. Easy, right? You're not having to fiddle with trying to get a loaf in. You pick up the paper and you just drop the whole thing in. So it makes it so easy. You avoid having to touch this. And trust me, I touched this a couple days ago and I've still got the burn to prove it on my thumb because I put it on the edge by accident. It's really hot. So once the bread's in there, you just want to make a couple of incisions into the dough. This is just going to help the steam to escape as it bakes. So just a couple of incisions. You don't want to go too deep, but that deep into the bread. A couple of incisions will help the steam to release. I'm also going to just put a little bit of flour, extra bit of dusting on it so it looks really authentic as a loaf. The lid goes on, just like that. Nice and secure. And we're going to pop that into our oven, and I've got my wire rack, by the way, set at medium. I don't want to have it too close to the bottom because the bottom will burn. I don't want to have it too close to the top or the top will burn. So this is going as close to middle of the oven as possible, and that's going to be in there for about 30 to 40 minutes depending on your oven. Keep an eye on it, but 30 is probably at the minimum, up to about 45 if your oven's not quite as hot as mine. So over to the oven. There we go. And of course, here's one I prepared earlier. Now, by the way, that cast iron there is from Aldi, $22.99. This cast iron is from a French company called, and it's not hot, by the way. I did this yesterday, so it's not hot. This cast iron is from a French company called Le Creuset, and this is like $369. I can't actually tell the difference in how the bread bakes because this is what I was able to produce for you guys yesterday. Check this beauty out. Look at that. Isn't that fantastic? Look at that. That looks like a normal loaf of bread. It absolutely looks like a normal loaf of bread, and you can achieve that in 30 to 40 minutes in your oven. I haven't put any glaze on it. I just put the bread in exactly like you saw it before, and what we are left with is this wonderful crunchy bread. So how do you know it's ready? Really good tip for you guys on how to know it's ready. First thing you want to do is you definitely are looking at the color. What sort of color do you have on top? Is it golden? You know, has it got lovely little peaks here of darker and lighter? That's how you indicate. But the best way to tell if a loaf of bread is ready is to give it a bit of a tap on the bottom. And when you tap it on the bottom, it should sound hollow. When that sounds hollow, you know your bread is ready. Very, very carefully take it out of your cast iron pot without burning fingers. That's why you lift it straight out on the paper. Lift the paper out of the pot. And then all you got to do is give it a bit of a slice. So we're going to do that right now. Already, I'm just looking at this, by the way, it's already starting to get a lovely rise. I'm going to stick my bowl. Bowl goes over just like that. That's where I leave it there to proof to double in size. That's about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how hot it is at your place. But let's cut this loaf open. Let's see what we've got. My bread knife. Here's my bread knife. So exciting. But you know, I think the main thing with this one is if you don't have a cast iron Dutch oven, and my one's about a 4 to 5 litre Dutch oven. If you don't have one, you can still get away with it. I've seen people make it in their bread oven. Yeah, the little bread ovens you guys had that make it themselves. I've seen people make it in those quite successfully. But bread makers, that's it. But you can see, look at the crumb on that. How fabulous is that? That just looks like a normal slice of bread. And that, exactly the recipe that I made for you guys is what this recipe is here. I didn't cheat, it's all done exactly like that. And you can see how gorgeous that crumb is in there, and we've got that one for those, the little holes are perfect, because what that means is the yeast has really gone into work there, and it started to raise the bread up, and then you get this wonderful crusty loaf of bread, and it's just phenomenal. It is phenomenal. So yeah, I'm probably, you guys are probably, you know what we're going to be having for lunch today, because we've got a loaf of bread here, we've got a loaf of bread over there, and we've got one in the oven. So I guess it's bread sandwich day in our house, but why not? Always treat it as a treat food, as I was saying. If you love this recipe, Mahé, could you throw, oh, you've got that link up there. Mahé's just given you another link to this. But also, if you like baking, which is, I love baking. I never thought I would say this, but I love baking. It was never something that I prioritized in my younger years as a chef. I love baking now. I have created some amazing bread recipes, from garlic naan to almond bread. What else have we got in that book? We've got the most amazing seeded bread. We have a soda bread, a seaweed soda bread, just the most amazing breads. I've got 32 breads and pastries in an ebook. If you guys want that, and you love this, you're going to love that book as well. It is just a phenomenal, all sorts of pastries, just the most incredible bagels, donuts. There's just everything in there that's good for us. So if you want that, Mahé's going to throw up a link to that ebook as well. It's phenomenal. It really is. This is phenomenal. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. I've enjoyed making it with you guys. Like I said, so satisfying, right? Bread making is so incredibly satisfying, and it's good that you're able to join me today. I hope you're just having a wonderful time wherever your New Year's Eve is today, or if it's New Year's Eve wherever you are. I hope you're having a wonderful time and being safe, and I hope to see you guys, actually not, I'll see you guys really soon, but I'll see you next year. Yeah, I'll see you next decade. I know, gotta throw on the cheesy jokes right at the end. Alright guys, love you so much. Oh yes, there's waffles in that one too. There is waffles, healthy waffles in that ebook. It is amazing. Bridget's Healthy Breads and Pastries. But download your your crusty bread bowl. Your crusty bread bowl. Download that one as well. Alright guys, have a wonderful day wherever you are. Talk to you real soon. Take care. Bye.